Storytelling is like foundational to human existence, right? Like it has played a critical role in every major human advancement ever, because our ability to work together and solve problems, to build community as people, to solve big problems and make great things happen has always hinged on this idea that we believed something could be that wasn't. And so we needed someone to tell us a story and to motivate us.
Hello there, my name is Monica Burns and welcome to today's bonus episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. If you're used to joining me on Tuesdays for new episodes, you are in for a treat. This is a special bonus episode of the podcast in partnership with Book Creator. Just like on Tuesdays, these bonus episodes are designed to give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. If we mention something you'd like to check out, you'll find the link to it in the show notes. So don't forget to head to my website, classtechtips.com/podcast, for all of the links and resources from today's episode. This episode is sponsored by Book Creator, the simplest, most inclusive way to create content in the classroom. Check out their writing competition that runs through March. Visit bookcreator.com/competition for details. That's bookcreator.com/competition. Today's episode is titled Helping Students Build Confidence Through Writing, a bonus episode with Book Creator. And today I'm chatting with David Hotler, the community manager at Book Creator. It's currently Be an Author Month. So this is the perfect time to chat about ways that storytelling, both the process and final product, can help kids build both literacy skills and confidence this school year. Let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to chat with you today about all things storytelling and Be an Author Month too. But before we get into all of that, can you share with listeners, what is your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is David Hotler, and I'm the community manager at Book Creator. And that means a lot of different things. Book Creator is not a very big company. There's not a lot of people working there. And so I wear a lot of hats. But I would say the thing that I love the most, and that I probably spend the most time doing, is connecting with the people in our community. So the people who have raised their hand and said, I'm a collaborator, I'm a champion, I want to be a trainer or an ambassador. Those folks, just elevating their message, their voice, their ideas, their best practices, so that more people can hear their stories and their messages, whether that means it's putting them on a webinar, having them write a blog post, connecting them with a partner to do the same thing, or in fact, connecting them with someone in product to improve Book Creator itself.
Yeah. And, we just saw each other, or not, I guess it's been a few weeks now, right at the FETC conference. So just, being on the ground and being part of that community myself, right? It's been wonderful to see some of those in-person connections and just the energy, right, around everyone coming together, even virtually sometimes, right, in nice big groups. And today, we're talking about storytelling. And, with this being our kind of big topic for our conversation, would love to start with why, right? Why do you think storytelling is such a valuable tool for building literacy and confidence in students?
Okay, well, that's a good two-parter. So in terms of literacy, we know from the research that storytelling, the act of getting up and telling a story to one or many people, it's going to improve language skills. It teaches story structure. It builds reading comprehension. It builds writing skills. Not only that, it just builds our confidence in standing up and speaking in front of people, as well as there's also benefits for the listener of a story. So research shows that someone listening to oral stories actually can improve their recall and comprehension in the reading side of things. And so we know that from a literacy perspective, storytelling has a big bang for its buck. It's something that we want to do in the classroom that's going to improve a lot of different areas within literacy at all the different levels. And then from a more practical sense, storytelling is like foundational to human existence, right? Like it has played a critical role in every major human advancement ever, because our ability to work together and solve problems, to build community as people, to solve big problems and make great things happen, has always hinged on this idea that we believed something could be that wasn't. And so we needed someone to tell us a story and to motivate us, whether it was a leader or whether it was a shared cultural story, to motivate us to work together and solve the shared problem and elevate and move forward within our species. So when we think about stories, I mean, we remember in stories, we think in stories, we turn just about everything in our lives into stories. It's critical. And now more than ever, our ability to tell stories and interact with stories and guide our own stories is so directly related to our ability to succeed in life, just as humans, especially in this age of tech. There's great stories tellers are at the center of the room. They're the class clowns. They get the most votes at the ballot box, and their businesses have the highest returns.
Yeah, I mean, we just think about all the ways that stories impact our decision making over the course of the day, the way we retain information, the things that we repeat ourselves as adults when other people tell us something that's compelling or interesting or that we never thought of in the same way. It's just such a massive part of how we connect with others. And so as we talk today about the literacy connections, how it can build student confidence, there's just so many cross-curricular applications too. So, we think about storytelling, maybe some of that oral storytelling is one, avenue, but also, publishing work, right? For someone who might not necessarily be sitting next to us or in the same room, right? How does that process of publishing, whether it's digital or print, help students see themselves as real, true, proud authors?
That's such a good question, because I think really there's two things happening in there. There's the technical aspect of publishing something. And especially if it's a book, if you're actually physically binding a book, like that's a labor that is an art and a science to learn. And it takes discipline and it takes learning something. And even doing the same on a much smaller scale, you're publishing a blog, you're still thinking about and curating the piece for its final form. And so that in and of itself, it has a culminating or summative effect on a process or to create a product. But there's also this other piece that's happening as we help students understand the function of storytelling, as well as use it as a tool for teaching. We're helping them understand the importance of audience and the importance of reach, and ultimately helping them realize the purpose and the value of their work. My friend Michael Hernandez is the author of a really fantastic book called Storytelling with Purpose. And he writes in it a lot about basically creating uncheatable assessments. So what can we do, especially now in our classrooms, to make sure that students aren't cheating? And he says, as long as the assessment that you're having them work on is something that's personal, it has a purpose and has originality to it, it's an uncheatable assessment. You can't cheat off of that. And all of those things are wrapped up in the process of publishing, especially if it's something that's authentic to the student, if it's personal and that it has a purpose in their life or in their community, and that it has originality. It's not something that's already been done before.
And I love that emphasis on the process, right? Going through the steps, the curation, like you mentioned, right? Making choices, evaluating, right? What you're going to share, how you're going to share it. And then of course, having something that is, rooted in a purpose. And Michael's been on the podcast actually too. So listeners might remember our conversations around uncheatable assessments and just having that personal, that purpose, right? The originality, right? This is something that is so primed and ready for kids to share with a wider audience. And I think comes back both to building those literacy skills and also building confidence, right? Not just as telling one singular story, but that confidence they can bring to all different parts of the day. And, you mentioned the print and the binding piece, right? Which of course is one way to get a physical story out into the world. But how does technology, like Book Creator, make storytelling more accessible and engaging for students?
Well, one of the advantages that we have at Book Creator is that we are not bound to, pun intended,
Yeah.
not bound to paper and pencil because we're a digital tool, obviously. And so the multimodal aspect of a digital book allows for so much more than just writing. And so, storytelling isn't just writing and it isn't just oral. Like you said, it can be so many different things. And Book Creator just allows that space. It's multimodal, it's open canvas, and its design features are sort of packaged in a way that doesn't interfere with expression. And what I mean by that is that Book Creator was born and is designed for students at the edges of the classroom. This concept of like edge case, use case, designing for edge case, I pulled off of this TED talk called The Myth of the Average. And essentially, there was this huge design shift that happened in industrial design when designers realized that if you stop designing for the average human, so take, for example, car seats in like a minivan, instead of measuring every single person and then averaging them all together and trying to design a seat for that person, you would make a much more comfortable seat if you design it for the tallest person that will ever drive your car and the shortest person that will ever drive your car. And if you can make it good for both of those individuals, it actually is way better for the average person, the person that's somewhere in the middle. And so Book Creator, we were born from that. We were born in 2011 as an iPad app by a father whose son was struggling with dyslexia. And he needed a better way for his son to read. And he wanted his son to write and read and get excited about literacy. And it wasn't coming from the classroom. And so his dad took action into his own hands and he made Book Creator. And they started making books about the garden and about Star Wars and about ants and about bugs and flowers. And suddenly his son loved to read and write and tell stories. And dad looks back at the iPad store and there's like 10,000 downloads of the app. And, that is the story of how we came to be. But the idea that Book Creator should serve the students in our classroom that need it the most is in our DNA. It's at our core. And so when a teacher looks at our platform, it doesn't look really complex. It's very simple to use. There's not a lot of buttons. They're high contrast. And that is very purposeful. Book Creator was built for students. And a lot of the feature requests we hear from teachers are features that make it different for teachers to use it so that it looks a little bit more like, Adobe Photoshop or something that they're used to. And they forget oftentimes, like, no. Book Creator was made for kids.
And it's interesting too to think back, more than a decade. I mean, I remember those early days of the iPad app for sure. Right? And at that time, particularly, and it still happens now, right? There's tools that come on the market that are not made with students in mind, that teachers maybe find a use case for, but they were never the primary audience, right? Or the primary user, right? For that particular tool. And I think it's one of the things that makes Book Creator so special, right? Is that student focus, that ability for students with all different interests, with all different ways that they want to tell their story in any subject area, to jump in, choose. When I share it with educators, like in professional development, I sometimes say it's like a choose your own adventure situation. Like, do you want to tell your story with voice to text or jumping on video, right? Or writing out your sentences in a more traditional way or adding a sketch, right? There's just so many ways to make storytelling accessible and engaging. And I love that example that you gave of designing with the edges in mind and just how that benefits everyone to make something that's going to give them exactly what they need. And so, as we think today, and you alluded to it a bit with the uncheatable assessments example, right? In today's, digital world, particularly with more generative AI tools, not just on the horizon, but right here, how can educators ensure that kids and, that storytelling that students are doing remains authentic and meaningful?
Well, I think, you so eloquently described all of the different ways in which someone can input something into Book Creator, and you said it in the same way that you're saying, these are ways we can tell stories.
Yeah.
Taking photographs of things and videos and audio recordings, those are all elements of a story. And so when we think about generative AI and how it's impacting the world, we're looking at it and thinking, well, wait a minute, that's producing what I used to be able to produce in way less time.
Yeah.
So why would I spend time making it? And so I would say that a way that to keep anything authentic anymore is to have the kids make it themselves.
Yeah.
Don't allow them to generate anything other than their own thoughts and have them put them down onto the paper. And so when I was a photography teacher, the number one thing that got the students excited, the one thing that would have the project that would get them to turn something in late, or the one thing that would have them working on it long after it was due for a grade or anything, was projects that did two things: connected them to their personal story. So kids just want to be heard. And if you tell them it's for a grade, that's great. And then if you tell them it's also going to be, published out into the world, or you can make this available to many people, they get really excited about that. The second thing was to connect them with their communities. Any project that we can bridge the gap between classroom and community. And when I use the word community, I mean their heritage community. I mean their religious community. I mean their physical, like, neighborhood community. I mean all of those things. Their skills and talent communities, their sport communities. Give them an avenue to be a leader in a space where they love spending their time, and teach them how to tell their story in such a way that gets other people to follow them, or other people to listen to them, or other people to value their ideas. If you can give students the time and space to do that in your classroom, and it will ensure that the learning remains authentic, but it will definitely ensure that it remains meaningful, because time we spend on our own narratives and our own understanding of our impact on the world, both past and present, is really one of the greatest investments that we can guide students to make, because being asked to tell our story over and over focuses us to refine how we want others to see us, how we want the world to perceive us. And our actions are what do that. So this is really driving us to think inwardly in order to act outwardly. And so generative AI makes understanding and being able to tell our own stories so important, simply because our authentic self is really the only non-fungible thing we have left that can't be replaced in a few clicks on a big LLM subscription. And so our value to the world is our story, and helping kids tell theirs and refine theirs is really how we move forward.
And I think that's such a good reminder for someone who's maybe tackling, like, what does generative AI mean for them? What does it look like or not look like in a classroom setting? And if you're having those moments of feeling like you're not getting, right, an authentic product of learning for students, maybe it's time to pivot, right, or revisit a creative tool, right, with that lens in mind. And, this time of year, right, we are chatting together in March, right, which is right in the middle of Be an Author Month. And it's been so much fun the past few years to partner with Book Creator to spread the word about Be an Author Month. How can teachers and students participate? Can you tell us a little bit about this special time of year?
Yeah, absolutely. I get so excited for Be an Author Month, and then I remember that it's something that we made up at Book Creator. Be an Author Month is in March. For us, it's our time of year to celebrate storytelling, to celebrate authorship, not just about writing, but it is something we sort of looked at the calendar and all of the, Read Across America Day and all of the literacy, like a lot of literacy stuff happens around March. And so we coined this as like a time for us to get everyone's attention and really point the spotlight on literacy and education, and just the ways that we can support literacy across the curriculum, which is that's our bread and butter. Yeah. Year round, we're supporting literacy and storytelling. But this month, it's pretty special, because this month in particular, we're going to run a big competition. So right now, teachers can jump onto our website, and all the links are in the show notes. But if you just go to bookcreator.com, you'll find templates, lessons, guides, rubrics for this competition. So it's really kind of like a turnkey based on the age group. It's a turnkey unit, lesson. It could be an extension. It could be a cross-curricular activity. But essentially, we've given you everything you need to put the students on the path of telling their personal narrative, telling a story. And then they submit those stories, and we're going to have some professionals take a look at them and put them up against a rubric. And then we have some fabulous prizes that we're going to be mailing out. So we've got all of our partners involved who are donating prizes. And then we've also got some e-readers, and just there's a lot of great stuff that we want to send to these young authors that are participating. So teachers can jump on and enter their students' personal narratives into these competitions. But we're really hoping is that they run these personal narrative competitions in their own classrooms and in their own schools.
And it's wild to see how many fantastic new resources you have for 2025. There's so much stuff. You mentioned the workbooks, how easy this is to turnkey, right? So there's just so much stuff waiting for educators to jump in, and some stuff that they can share directly with their students. Really great new templates. And, what are some, for someone who might be listening and they are not in a traditional ELA classroom, but they love this idea, right? Storytelling opportunities, and they know, right, that it works, right, in all different subject areas. What are some creative ways teachers can incorporate publishing into their curriculum, even in those subjects that are outside of ELA?
One of my favorite and most recent examples comes from one of our ambassadors who is working with some teachers in math, and they're making what are called anti-textbooks, anti-math textbooks. And so the students are using storytelling to explain math concepts, to explain how and where they see math in the world, and with the idea that that book would then be used to teach that math concept to a younger grade. And so I loved that, to see that going on. But yes, like you mentioned, we have tons of templates like our STEM journals, Nature Walks journal that we have as well. So there's a lot of science and engineering journals available. We've seen schools publish their own science journals, right? Like publishing the work of the scientists at their school. We've also seen a lot of really cool maker manuals. So folks that are making a product and then explaining how someone would then make it themselves or use it. Newsletters, digital art portfolios, and social studies. We have students who are connecting with their elders, recording indigenous languages and stories that have never been recorded before. We see in PE classes with sports manuals and guides. I mean, publishing is everywhere.
Oh my gosh, oodles of ideas. And I know Book Creator's website too has really great exemplars that are cross-curricular, right, that people can dive into and look at different grade levels. So just so many things. And so before I ask you to share with us, David, about where people can connect with you and where they can learn more about your work, what is one thing you wish more educators knew about student storytelling and publishing?
I think it would be that the process matters more than the end product. And really, in some ways, the process is the product, right? So repeating the process with students over and over, that's the important part. Getting them to love the process is the important part. So in the design world, Goodhart's law says that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And so we want to make the targets personal, and we want to make the measurements practical so that students repeat that process well beyond their time with us in the classroom. So by doing this with students, we're also validating their story by giving them that elevated platform in our classroom. We're saying you're important to the world, and everything, what you do can matter. You matter. Go out and make a change. That's the story that got us to the moon. You matter. You can do this. And that, I think, is the story that's going to move us forward to a better future, not the spelling and the grammar. Just tell your story. You matter. Get it out there and keep telling it over and over and over and over.
What a fantastic message for educators during this Be an Author month, and with this new Tell a Story, right, competition for them to dive into. So I will link out for listeners so they can tap on all the links in the show notes or in the description wherever they're listening to this episode. But for someone who is maybe on the move or on the go, that as they're listening to this episode, where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about your work?
So my name is David Hotler, and my initials D Hotler, Hotler. You can find me just about anywhere. But I spend most of my time on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and on Facebook. So D Hotler at any one of those platforms, you'll find me. You can also add @bookcreator.com and shoot me an email as well. So would love to connect with you anywhere that you are. Just fire me a message.
Perfect. Well, thank you, David, so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica.
It was so much fun chatting with David from Book Creator today. Let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Storytelling enhances literacy, builds comprehension and confidence. Authentic assessments are uncheatable when they are personal and original. Designing for the edges benefits all users by accommodating the broadest range of needs. Publishing work helps students see themselves as real authors, boosting confidence. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from today's episode by heading to classtechtips.com/podcast. That's where you'll find all the ways to connect with David and the team at Book Creator. Thank you to Book Creator for sponsoring this episode. March is Be an Author Month, and Book Creator is running a competition to get kids engaged in writing. Head over to bookcreator.com/competition to learn more, or search Be an Author Month online. That's bookcreator.com/competition. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or maybe another favorite app, don't forget to hit the follow button. When you follow along with the podcast, each new episode will download for you automatically. That way, you won't miss a thing. And if you have a moment and are feeling extra helpful today, please leave a rating or review for the podcast. It helps other educators find this podcast when they're searching for topics like ed tech in their podcast app. Have a great week and check back on Tuesday morning for another new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast.